Hello and welcome back to the broadcast. This is the Executive Network, and it's a delight to be reaching you today again on another Thursday. Um, we have been going through this Good News Rediscovery series, as you will recall, if you've been part of this series. But if you're joining us for the first time, this is just a revisiting of the very words of our Lord and Master, Yeshua, the Lord Jesus Christ, to pay attention to what He said, to rediscover His heart and His mind for us, to move away from assumptions and revisit the reality of His Word. We don't want to assume that these are just Bible stories that only teach maxims, teach um, uh, just lessons for life here and there. But we really want to get back to His heart, and we want to know His thoughts. What was on His mind? What is on the mind of God? What did Jesus reveal about the mind of God? How would our thoughts be His thoughts? How would our ways be His ways? These are the critical questions that we are considering, and these are the things driving us to this series. So as we go through, please keep this close to heart, because these are the questions we're trying to answer. These are the things that we want to pay attention to, uh, and we're trusting that we will find answers. Well, what's our confidence? Whoever seeks will find. So we are seekers. We're seeking His heart and mind. We want to know. We don't want to assume. We want to correct our assumptions where we've assumed. We want to make sure that how He thinks is how we think. And I like one of the scriptures that say, "Come, let's reason together." So it tells me that God is not opposed to reasoning. I like that. For my thoughts are not your thoughts. So He thinks. I know the thoughts that I think towards you. So it's godly to think. I don't mean that in any bad way, but um, it just puts emphasis on what He prioritizes. Well, are we saying, oh, you mean it's we're moving away from being spiritual and all that? Well, I'll ask you, what do you mean by being spiritual? Spiritual things are intangible things, even though they have real and tangible impacts. They are the unseen things that control things that are seen. Thoughts are unseen, but their effects are very tangible. So, thoughts are spiritual things, they are spiritual entities. And especially when the thought is God's thought. If the thought has its source in or in and its origin in God, then we know that that is in fact a godly spiritual entity. It may be spiritual and not godly, but it cannot be godly and not spiritual. And this is why we're looking at this. Okay, that is just a bit of preamble. But I would like to remind us that we've been paying close attention to the chain of thought that Jesus was expressing in the words of a skillful teacher in the book of Matthew. And we want to continue and try to wrap up our experience in this book of Matthew. This is by no means the end of it. I mean, you would recall that if we go back to a previous verse, it would be as if we are seeing it for the first time because it comes again as new. So, but this is just for the sake of our presentation. Let's try to wrap this up so that we can move forward. And I'm going to begin from Matthew 5:38. I'll go through to verse 48. That's about 10 verses there. Now, in the first part, Jesus teaches about it teaches against fighting back, or what you call retaliation, and he extended that thought to from a don't to a do, and he's saying, well, in its place, do something else, and we're going to be looking at that. And this episode has been titled Fit for Purpose, and you wonder, what has purpose got to do with this? Well, we'll see in a minute. There is almost a kind of summary, a theme that emerges as you go through the entirety of Matthew 5. And that theme is right at the bottom of the chapter. That is, Jesus said all of this in order to say this one thing. So if you are picking the previous verses and you look at them in isolation, well, you would have only picked a piece of the puzzle, not having seen the full picture or what it was going to conclude with. That is, the conclusion is the reason for all of the previous lines of thought or teaching. All right, so let's look at this. Now, it continued. It was saying, you've heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. And who said that? This was something well documented in the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Bible, documented by none other than Moshe, Rabbeinu Moshe, Moses. So, but I tell you, don't fight back against someone who wants to do harm to you. Immediately, someone will say, that just doesn't make sense. I mean, in this day and age, when someone wants to harm you, fight back, defend yourself. Well, let's not rush into conclusion. Let's look at the line of thought and then see why this has been said. He went on to say even something that someone will find so baffling. If they hit you on the right cheek, let them hit the other cheek too. Oh, you mean I should let them slap me black and blue until I have no more face? If anyone wants to sue you in court and take your shirt, let them have your coat also. Well, maybe I should just say that, that kind of slapping, the slapping on the right cheek, it was a contemptuous way of dealing with a person. That slap is not just slap in that way and then that's the end of it. No, it was a kind of slap. The way it was done, it was to show contempt to a person. It was to treat someone with contempt. And within Jewish culture, the face of a person is normally deemed to be uh, it is connected in a way to the value of that person. I don't mean the configuration of the face, but I mean just the face, because that is the most public part of someone that is seen by another person. Usually, if you look at the way the people dress in those days and all of that, the face is usually left bare. So you see the men will have beards depending on where they come from. The ladies, you may not see any other part of their body, but at least you see their faces, unless they are veiled. But the face is deemed to be the glory of a man, the expression of someone's glory. That's why you will see in many times in scriptures you hear the things like the face of God, and God will also say, "No man can see my face and live." You see things like, "Let me see your face, let me behold your face." It's almost like a an expression of the value, the personality, the glory, the virtue of someone. So when you slap that face, you're actually treating all of that, the personality and everything that person represents with contempt, with utter disregard. Okay, but let's not dwell too much on that and move on. So in other words, someone treats you with so much contempt and disregard, said, well, if someone drags your honor in the mud, that's pretty much what he's saying there. If anyone wants to see you in court and take your shirt, let them have your coat also. If a soldier forces you to walk with him 1 mile, go with him 2. All of these things, they point to the experiences of everyday people in the community. Some of them will have been so oppressed by the occupying Roman soldiers, where they would, by law, compel them to carry their baggage for 1 mile, and oftentimes it was always the height of inconvenience to people who were already set to do their own business. They already had a mission going somewhere, and someone makes them abandon an urgent appointment, an urgent matter, or even a journey with a family member, and then take them in another direction, just to show that we have power over you, to use you. In another way, you could say showing contempt, disregard, dishonor to people in their community. All of this go together. If someone take your shirt, let him have your coat also. If someone takes your shirt, okay, imagine that you're going for an event and someone takes your shirt. What could be more dishonorable? Should you then go naked? Should you then be out of place? So these are things that have to do with dishonorable treatment or contentious treatment of people. And this was what they were suffering. This was even worse than just discrimination. This is outright oppression, outright suppression of people. And that's why the whole subject was around fighting back. The things that could make them fight back and say, no, I've had enough, I'm not taking this anymore. And sometimes it may be done right before their children. So imagine a father, the head of a family, being treated with such contempt before his son, before his daughter. Well, the tendency is you want to fight back and say, no, I'm not having that. You're not going to dishonor me in front of my family, in front of my wife, and that kind of thing. Or you're not going to dishonor my wife. I'm going to fight to the death here. These are things that people are facing. And we're saying to them, listen, there is another way. The people, obviously, they were looking for someone to save them, to deliver them, to be their champion against this oppressive treatment. Now, If Jesus was not going to fight them in the way they were thinking, well, they probably have said, you know what, Jesus, stay out of this matter. We will sort these things out one of these days. And he went on to say, give to anyone who asks you for something. Don't refuse to give to anyone who wants to borrow from you. Now, there are things that you could look at in this. How about someone who would just never return it once it borrows? How about someone who doesn't seem deserving to be given? And these are things that people, they've said, that person, the next time he comes here, I'm not opening my door. Is such an ingrate, and things like that. Okay. Now, was Jesus teaching weakness? Was he teaching passivity, people to be passive, to be docile, and to just be doormats? Well, I want to point to what Jesus was really getting at in teaching this. Don't forget, this is not like one of his first public addresses. You know, his initial engagement with people in the community, and was teaching them all of these things. I imagine most of them will have been wondering and thinking, what kind of man is this? What is he on about? What does he want to turn us to be? What kind of person is this? This is not what we're looking for. We're certainly not wanting any of this. We've suffered enough. We're not looking for someone to pile more suffering on our lives. So what do you mean don't fight back? What do you mean don't resist it? Okay. There's a point I'm going to make as I look at the other verses from verse 43. Let me read on. Now, he now said, you have heard it said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. Now, you could look at this as sharply as, defend your own brothers and members of your community, but these invaders, these outsiders, hate them. These oppressors hate them. Because it was clear, if you are not for us, then you are against us. If you are not promoting the welfare of our community, of our people, then you hate us. You are our enemy. And if you are also a collaborator with those who oppress us, you have made yourself an enemy. You are a traitor. And we will teach you as such. That was the attitude. And who could blame them? Verse 44, it says, but I tell you, love your enemies. That certainly must have sent shockwaves down the spine of people. How can I love a soldier who just took away my coat, or who just took away my precious time with family and damaged my business appointment, damaged the occasion we're going for as a family? How can I possibly love such a person? Someone who hit me on the face right in the full view of members of my family, and I'm the head of the family. How can I love that person? Now, he went on to say, when you even do your prayers, it says, pray for those who treat you badly. Now, you can see that all of those experiences was all, you can summarize them as bad treatment, or adversarial treatment. Pray for those who treat you badly. If you do this, now look at where Jesus is landing it. If you do this, if he knew it would be difficult, and not hardly any one of them would even buy into this. It says, if, verse 45, if you do this, you will be something different. It will be a reflection of something that has occurred. You will be the children who are truly like your Father in heaven. I wonder again what this will have done to the people, because they certainly hardly ever saw God as Father. They will have been looking at God as our God, this God of Israel, the national God, fearful God, awesome God, and He's all of those. But the relationship that they would think in terms of being a father-son relationship, that wasn't so much entrenched in their psyche. They knew, yes, Israel was a kind of son to God, but I'm sure there was a lot more to say about the awesomeness, the fierceness, the the warlike nature of God, that the family one, the father one, must have probably been relegated a bit. But here Jesus say, if you do this, you will be children who are truly like your Father in heaven. And Jesus now started to express God's attitude and his treatment of people. He said, He lets the sun rise, He let the sun rise for all people, whether they are good or bad. He sends rain to those who do right and to those who do wrong. Again, someone can say, well, that's God. That's God. God can afford to do that. After all, nothing is impossible with him. But for me, I'm only human. If someone really, an eye for an eye, if you damage if you go that length, I have to have a say about it. Verse 46, if you love only those who love you, why should you get a reward for that? A question. Well, the people have said, well, after all, I know the people I love, I know my community. I love them, they love me back. That's a reward, and God should understand that. Who could blame them? Who could blame them? That's absolutely a human way to look at it. And he said, even the tax Jesus was really almost, if you like, tightening the screen a bit. He was using examples. He was reminding them of things, or he was using things in their daily or in their communal experiences that would really uh, trigger their emotions in a way. He said, if you love only those who love you, why should you get a reward for that? Even the tax collectors do that. Now, I just I'm trying to picture the minds of the people. Even the tax collectors do that. Now, this community hate tax collectors. Tax collectors, they see as traitors, they see as collaborators with oppressors. These are people who would go hunting after farmers, who, after their hard labor, as soon as they get anything at all from their produce, they're demanding tax. And they pay some to the they were like agencies to the occupying forces who are controlling their land. They pay, and the various people who are oppressing them, including their royalties, so, or their monarchs. So, the likes of Herod and the rest of them, you pay, something goes to the Romans, something goes to their overlords, to their and then these guys will take agency fees. Of course, they are working for the agency fees, so they would literally hunt down their own. And because they were members of the community, they knew all the tricks that people would pull. So they were just countering the people anyway they want anyway they wanted to go about it. They knew all of the tricks in the book, so you couldn't necessarily escape them, because these were people who knew the community, they were from the community. So if a farmer was trying to say, I've not sold, they would say, no, I saw you yesterday when you were selling. So they knew all of these things. So it was just using their own to oppress them. That was the strategy of their oppressors. Okay. Said even the tax collectors do that. And I can imagine, Jesus, how dare you compare me to a tax collector? What do you mean? Well, and you can see how he really went into the heart of the matter. That is, if you love what people love you, you are not really different. You're not better than the tax collectors. I must say, no, I'm better than the. Don't you compare me to a tax collector. 47. So, and if you are nice only to your friends, you are no better than anyone else. Even the people who don't know God are nice to their friends. Now, it was talking about pagans now, and you could directly see almost the corner of the eye of Jesus looking at the Romans, who definitely were pagans, who were their oppressors. You can say, even they are nice to their friends, so you are not really better than them. And it was using the personas who they really love to hate. Jesus then concluded, verse 48 said, what I am saying is that you must be perfect, just as your Father in heaven is perfect. And therein lies the heart of the matter. It's the conclusion of all that we've been talking about in this chapter, Matthew chapter 5. But therein lies the heart of all of this. He was saying there is something you must be, which is perfect, like your Father, even as, just as your Father is perfect. And I couldn't help but look at the word perfect. It means fulfill the purpose for which you are, just like your Father is. Or act like who you are. Act like your true nature. Become your true self. He was saying this, that in essence, there is a kind of conversion that was to happen in these people. That conversion will literally reposition them as true children of God, true sons of God. Now, if this was immediately possible for the people, I'm sure they will have probably said, okay, that's how God will do it. Now, can I just say that even his own disciples found this very hard to do? And these were people who were following him everywhere. Remember when they were about to travel through the cities of the Samaritans, and the Samaritans forbade them? Remember the statements from John and James. They certainly weren't loving their enemies. They said, Jesus, should we call down fire right now and burn these people up? They were not loving their enemies. They were not going to do good to them that hated them, as far as they were concerned. Meaning these guys haven't really gotten in those who are following him. He was referring to something that was to happen to them. That if they would embrace it, they would become something else. And this you cannot dissociate this chapter from what he has started to say in Matthew chapter 4 verse 17, when he said, repent, rethink. That is, a change is required. But that change is not something that you would labor to do, like you've been laboring to fulfill the laws and you are failing. So something will happen to you. And here you could literally see a reference to what Jesus was going to do to enable them to walk as he had been teaching them to. Jesus was inevitably pointing to a kind of death that would occur in them, that that loving their enemies would become a possibility. Let me put it straight. He was saying that except you really lose your life, you cannot gain it. He was saying, what I'm calling you into, the kind of life that I'm calling you to live in the kingdom of God, will require a certain kind of death. And that death will be the death of the man that lives inside of you, the old man. The old man cannot love his enemy. The old man will most certainly retaliate. The old man will most certainly fight back against someone who wants to do harm to it. There's no question about that. The old man will even take the soldier to task and say, well, someone has to go down here today. The old man will say, no, I borrowed you yesterday, but you didn't repay. You better go away right now before I change my I change my mind. That's what the old man will say. The old man will hate the enemy, no doubt. The old man will not dare pray for those who treat him badly. If he's going to pray, he's going to be raining curses. The old man does not have a father in heaven. That is, the father of the old self, the sinful self, is not God. That is really the offspring of Satan. So, now, just saying, there is going to be a replacement of that in the work I've come to accomplish. And upon the completion of that work, if you believe, you will be like your Father. You would be perfect. You will be able to fulfill the effect of your true nature, the nature of God in you, just like your Father. You would regain your God nature again. You would regain your God nature. You will be able to function in the image of God, in the likeness of God again. This is promissory. Then my question is, was this promise fulfilled? Yes, it was. Because the fact that Jesus died is not an expectation, it's a reality. He died, and in his death, the man that cannot love an enemy already died with him. Now, the man that can be as the Father, that can be perfect, that is, produce the effect of his design, is already here. Because Jesus did not just die, he also rose, and in rising, the old man was condemned to the cross, but the new man who never knew sin was the one that resurrected. And that is now the life we shared with Christ. Christ's life is the life we share. It didn't scrub the old man. It didn't wash it and scrub it and say, yeah, you can have it back now. No, that became a lost cause. The old man was a total loss. I mean, it was lost altogether. What the sons of the kingdom have been given in place of that is the Christ. Christ is now who the kingdom citizen, the child of God, carries in order to be able to do what Jesus was saying here. It is impossible to be this, to do this, without that, an embracing of that experience. Now, is it something to work, to strive to do? I've got to strive to love my enemy. No, it is a nature to bear. It is an embrace, a realization that, wait a minute, the old man that I had the hateful, the resentful, the vengeful man that I had died. And in its place, I have the Christ. The Christ who only is able to say, forgive them, for they know not what they do. You see, what Jesus was saying here was what he himself would demonstrate in the face of such fierce opposition and fierce, uh, um, horrendous treatment. And he proved that only this kind of life can handle this. No other kind of life can. So this is not something to struggle with, to say, oh, I will not lie, I will not make an oath, I will not fight back, I will love my enemies. No, you will find out that time after time, there would only be failings and failings and failings and failings. Because the old man, even when he is temporarily gentle, be rest assured, has this fierce vengefulness in it that would eventually rise up. It is only the Christ who is the replacement for the old man that can live what Jesus is saying here. And that's what we've been offered. It is not a future experience, it's not an expectation, it's a present tense reality. How did Jesus say we should experience this? He said, believe. He said, this is the work of God, that you believe. Meaning, believing is now not just a mental acceptance. No, it is, wait a minute, it is a heart acceptance. It becomes the treasure that I store in the bank of my heart, in my subconscious, in my, well, whatever level of consciousness it is, sub or pre-sub, I don't know what we call it, but in my heart of heart, I know that this is my reality. This has occurred for me. It is that life that can love an enemy, that can indeed be perfect. There are no two ways about this. That is the life God is looking for. That is the life he invites to live in the kingdom of God. No wonder, look at the experience Nicodemus had with Jesus. Jesus was saying all of those things, and as far as Nicodemus was concerned, those things were futuristic. Jesus was telling him the ideal, what was to come, even though Nicodemus could not enter into it. And Nicodemus knew when he could enter into it. When Jesus died, it was part of himself, and Simon said, okay, let us take up his body. We know that what he told me that night, I can now step into it because it has now happened. Now I can step into it. The Greek people who wanted to see Jesus, they went to Philip and said, we would like to have an appointment with Jesus. Jesus knew that they could not experience this life until he had gone to the cross and experience this certain death that would be to our credit, to our account. Only then could the Greek truly meet him, no longer in flesh and blood, but they could now have his life. And this is the reality of all of this chapter. You will see, you will become, you will. It was a promise, it was promissory, it was something to expect. But when Jesus had gone to the cross, he said, no, it's no longer a you will be, it is now a reality. It is finished. I've done the work. You can enter into it now. So indeed, except a man be born of water and the blood, it cannot enter. And didn't Jesus really shed both the water and the blood? He did. Now it means people can now enter. We all can experience, not expect, but experience this as our reality. This is the life, the kingdom life that we've been calling to. And it will produce all of this naturally, perfectly. Perfectly is not as it's usually spoken about. No, as an impossibility. Perfection means it's behaving according to its nature. It's delivering according to the design. It's now realizing its purpose. Thank you. I think we should stop here. Well, thanks for joining us tonight, and I hope this has been useful. We look forward to connecting with you next time, next week, by the grace of God. Until then, stay in God's love as I also pray to do, and we'll connect again next time. Have a good evening. God bless. I'll see you next time.